Hello and welcome. My name is Lucky, and today we'll be working on tutorial 2 for HTMX. And in this tutorial, we will be using Node.js, HTMX, and JavaScript to create a CRUD app: create, read, update, and delete. Right. So this is going to be a contact list that you're going to be able to edit and delete contacts. We have a few directories here. The first one is our node modules, which has our dependencies and everything. Then we have a public folder, which has our styles, which is CSS, right? And then we have our roots folder, which has our JavaScript file. And here, that's where we have essentially what's going to be rendered. Right, this is going to be the backend for our application. Then we have views, which will be pug files that all create contacts and forms and indexes and sidebars, right? And then we have our app.js, which is more JavaScript that just is going to add to our backend, and is what's going to run everything, right? Basically where the node and Express is going to be. And then we have two files here: JSON. We have package.json and package.json, and they all deal with our dependencies once more. So I'm going to first start by going through our index.js. So index.js, as you can see, we require Express here, and then we create a variable called the router, which is just going to use the router method for Express. We have an array here of objects, and each object has a ID property, a name property, and an email property, and these are essentially going to be our contacts. These are going to be their names and emails and IDs, right? And then the first thing that we're going to do is this is going to be the first page that we're going to visit, which is the first root endpoint, right? The /contact root. And to generate that, when we visit it, we use the get handler here. As you can see, we go back to our router and we say .get, then we put in the endpoint here. We run an anonymous function which takes in request and response as parameters, and in that function, well, the only thing that we're going to do is take the response, and as the response we are going to render the index. And the action here, the action is nothing, because all we're doing is just rendering the page, and it's going to display our contacts, right? And then we now have another root here, which is /contacts/new, which this one is the root that makes you able to update the contacts, right? This is going to be the U in CRUD, right? And then as you can see in here, we use the .get method once more to go to the /contact/new router to handle that. And then we have another function which takes in request and response as parameters, and then we have an if statement inside of that function. And then the first thing that we do is we check our headers, right? We check our headers in this index right here, so the hx request excuse me. So we check the hx request of the header, right? And if it exists, if it's not null, we render a form, and basically we give the user the ability to create a contact and add them to the object, right? Or else, if it is null or something like that, we actually render the index page, which is this one, and the action is new, meaning that we are updating, right? We're creating a new contact, and we render our contacts, right, just to be able to update those contacts. And then we have our other root here, which is /contact/1, where it's basically just taking the identifier for the first of our contacts. In this case, that's going to be John Doe. And as you can see here, we have a similar function, but now the root is /contact/ID, is just a placeholder for the ID. And then once more, we have a request and response in our function as parameters. And then we create these variables here, and essentially what's important is this function here, where we look for the ID to match the ID that we get here, right? And when it does, we render the contact that has that ID. In this case, if you put on your browser tab the IP address and /contact/1 is going to show you John Doe, and will be showing that, right? And then now we have the other root slash contact slash one slash edit. This allows us to edit the contact whose ID we provided, and we have this as the root right here, which is just the same as this, but now we use a placeholder instead of the actual ID. And as you can see, once more we have this anonymous function here that takes request and response as parameters, and once again it does a similar thing as the first one, where we find the contact who matches the ID that is provided in the URL in the root, and then we use an if statement, right, to check once more the HX request in the headers, and if we find it, if it's not null, we render the form of that contact really. So this is excuse me, I said this was update. This is not update. New is actually create, right? This is update because now we have the ability to edit an existing contact. Here we were just adding a contact that didn't exist, right? So this is the U in our CRUD, right? And then if the contact exists, that's what we do. We provide a form that has the details of the contact and you can edit it. Or else if the contact does not exist, we go here and the action is edit. We try to take you to the edit page, right? And then here we have slash contacts, and now we are dealing with post request, right? So we're going to use a post handler. So that means we're sending information into the app, and we go back to our slash contacts root, right? Once more we have this function takes request and response as parameters. We create a variable called new contact, and as you can see, it is an object, and basically at this point you are creating the objects, right? You're creating something that looks like this. However, you're going to be putting the information on the web app, or you'll be putting the information on the web app as you are using it, and then you are just going to send that information you're going to send it to our router, right? Our routes, yes. Now we take the contact object, the contact array. Remember, this is an array of objects, and we push this new contact. So we are adding, right, the contacts to this array right here, and then we check the HX request attributes for the headers, right? And then we render the sidebar, the contacts, right? And then we have some logic to deal with errors, right? But then the main thing that we are doing here is generating this HTML right here, which will tell you that the contact was successfully added, right? But that is if this evaluates to true, right? And then we send that HTML, and then the contact now appears when you go to slash contact. The contact, their details that you send via the post request will now appear on the contact page, or else if this does not evaluate to true, right? What's going to happen is that we're going to render the new contacts page, right? As you can see, the action is new. That means you will be taken to go create a new contact. So now we are working with the put request, right? Put request is when we are updating any information. So we have information, but we want to change it. And as you can see, now we are dealing with a specific contact, right? A specific ID. So we have slash contact slash one, and as you can see, this takes us to our root, which is slash update slash ID, right? And inside of the function that handles all of that, as you can see, we have our new contact variable once more, right? And it's an object, right? And this time we take the existing ID, right? We don't create an ID here. We're creating an ID. We had the length of the IDs that are already there, and we add one, basically just to add a new ID, right? Now we are not doing that. We are taking the ID that is provided in the URL in the root, right? And then we are giving that as the ID, right? Because we are updating now, right? We're updating information, and then we take the name that is already provided for the contact, and we take the email that is already provided for the contact, right? So whatever you input there, it's going to be changes to what already exists, right? And then we create a variable called index, and then in index we look at our contacts array, and then we find the index, right, that has the ID that we are looking for, right? And then if that ID doesn't exist, we create a new contact with these excuse me, with this information here, right? And then this is our if statement that we've worked with before, and as you can see, we look into the HX request in the headers, and then we render the sidebar context, right? It's basically the same flash message that we generated before, but now it says updated instead of successfully added, right? It says updated, and then it shows you the contact that you just added, that you just updated, right? And then it sends that HTML back to our contacts page, right? And then yes, if it doesn't work, it just takes you to /context/index +1, right? So that's basically the index of, remember the index function here, it's the index of the contact that we had right here, right? Excuse me. So the last thing now that we're going to be dealing with is the D in our CRUD acronym. And as you can see, the root working with the /contact/ the ID of the user. In this case, the example is 1. And as you can see, we are using the .delete method now, right? And as you can see, this is the root which gets taken to /delete/ID. Once again, we have this anonymous function, takes in a request and response as parameters, right? And we do the similar thing of finding the index of the contact that has the ID that is provided in the root. And then if it doesn't exist, then we splice it, right? We splice the index that we found, right? We go to contact, we go to our contacts array, and then we use the .splice method basically to separate and get the first to add one thing, right? We use the splice method to add whatever ID we provided here, right? And then we look at our HX request in our headers, and then we basically do the same thing when we render a page where we add this HTML here, and it says contact was successfully deleted, right? Because remember, contact is an array, we just remove the index of the user, right? That's if the contact does exist, right? Sorry, I said it doesn't exist. I meant when the contact does exist, we remove them from the array using the splice method, and this whatever we found here, the index that we found here, using this function here, and then we generate that HTML to update the user to tell them that the contact was successfully deleted, and we display that on our /contacts page. Or else if basically we did not find the user, so let's say the ID that was provided is of a user that is of a contact that does not exist, then you can't delete something that doesn't exist. So we redirect the user back to the /contacts page, which is our default page essentially. And then as you can see, we use .exports here to update we use the router to update the module .exports, right? So now I'm just going to run this on the on the browser. I'm going to be using npm run dev, and this is going to run our node server, and then that is where our web app, really our CRUD app, is going to be. And yes, so it's still working.
Okay.
So now we have used the npm run dev command to run our Express server. As you can see, it's running on port 3000. So I'm just going to take it step by step, right? As you can see, the first route that we have here is /contacts. When I go to the browser, you can see that's what we have, and this is what it displays. It just displays our contacts, and it says select a contact here, right? And then this is the R in our CRUD acronym. As you can see, we can click on John Doe, and it shows us the details for John Doe. So basically, if you remember that object, this is the name property, and this is the email property, and then this is the ID. As you can see here, the ID is 1. When you go to Jane Smith, it changes to 2, 3, just like that. And then it gives us the ability also to read, as you can see, right? And I also have the ability to use C to create. Let me create my own name, right? Let me just put it here, and then this is going to be my email, as you can see, and then I just submit. As you can see, I am added to the, okay, let me click submit. Yeah, as you can see, when I click submit, it works, and I've successfully created the contact here. As you can see, we have the ability to use our put request to edit the contact, and let's say I want to put my initial, right? So just gonna do something like this, and as you can see, contact was successfully updated. But we also have the ability to delete the contacts. As you can see, contact was successfully deleted. And yes, that was using HTMX, Express, and Node to create a CRUD app. Thank you.